Now, we're here at this SOPA Awards. In April last year that you announced that the Human Rights Press Awards, which was really key awards for Hong Kong journalism, would be suspended for fear of possible legal repercussions. So there was a lot of criticism about how that decision to cancel was handled, and also was made so close to the date of the awards ceremony. So looking back, would you have done anything differently? Could you have handled it differently so that somehow you could have had those awards?
I would have handled it a lot differently. We would never have started the awards in the first place. If I'd had a chance to have it, we never would have opened the awards up and had the competition and then had to cancel it at the last minute. That was the mistake. Our mistake was thinking the FCC could go ahead and have the Human Rights Press Award. But what had happened is in that year before, so that'd be 2021, our partners pulled out because they didn't feel it was safe. They did a risk assessment. It was administered by Chinese University of Hong Kong that decided it was not safe to do it. They did a risk assessment. Amnesty International left Hong Kong, and they said, sorry, we don't think we can do this anymore in Hong Kong. And the FCC board, I don't make any decisions. I take it to the board. And the FCC board at first said, well, we had 25 years. SOPA's got 25 years this year. The Human Rights Press Award had 25 years then. And we said, some people said, well, let's just say we had it for 25 years, let's cancel it now. Others said, and myself included, said, well, let's try. Let's try to do it. We had the competition, we opened it up, and then the problem that happened was when the finalists came in, they looked at the finalists, and several of the categories were won by, and you all know it now, it's not been published by us, but it's been recognized by Stand News. By that time, Stand News had been shut down, and some of its editors and people being arrested for sedition. And so we got some written legal advice from 3 different lawyers who said, yeah, you could have a legal problem here. This is a very risky thing. And so the board debated various things. As president, I just presided over the board. I didn't actually vote until the last minute. So you had 2 choices. Go ahead, just ignore this, go ahead and give the awards out, cancel the award entirely, or give the awards out in the non-problematic categories, but withhold them for the categories that were problematic. I called that threading the needle, trying to do one side or the other. The FCC board, by the way, is just all of you. It's journalists in the room. It's people who work it's people at the board at the time were people from CNN, AFP, all the major news organizations were on the board, and everybody agreed except for one person on the board. 17 members on the board, 16 out of 17 agreed that it was just too risky from a risk assessment standpoint to go ahead and give these awards away. The awards found a new home. They're at Arizona State University in the U.S., the Cronkite School, which is a great school. They just announced the winners of the Human Rights Press Award for this year and recognized the ones from the year that we couldn't do it. So they're in a safe place. The awards will continue. They'll continue on forever, I hope. SOPA, this award, they have a really, if we had SOPA's rules, we could have had the awards. Because SOPA's rules say that if an organization is no longer publishing at the time of the awards, they can't get the award. And since Stand News was no longer publishing, then that wouldn't have been a problem. But Human Rights Press Award didn't have that rule.
Okay, so that sounds a bit like a technicality, though.
It's a technicality that saved SOPA from the same issue that the Human Rights Press Award and the FCC faced. Absolutely.
So is that it then? I mean, obviously since last year, the net seems to be getting tighter in Hong Kong. Does that mean the FCC can never hold the Human Rights Press Awards again? They are gone. They're not ever coming back.
Well, someone else is hosting it now, and they're doing a great job, and they've announced winners. So I'd never say what a future FCC could do. They could start a new Press Freedom Award tomorrow. That's up to the board of the FCC every year to decide what to do. But given the risk assessment that we did and the written legal advice we got at the time, we just thought it was just too problematic to continue that.
Okay, let's talk a bit more about risk assessment, because it seems like a lot of us are having to think about risk assessment in daily work now. We could just see, where are the red lines? We don't know. Can we say this? Can we interview that person? Can I ask that question on air? How are we supposed to work in this environment? Tell the true stories if we could get into a whole range of trouble.
It's a tough challenge because we don't know where the red lines are. I teach students every day, and I have to tell journalism students, be bold, be brave, and be careful. And by being careful, I mean your first job, to me, is to try not to get arrested. Because once you're arrested, you can't do journalism. Your job is to do journalism and to tell stories. If you're in prison, you're not going to tell stories anymore. So your first job is to try to calibrate it so you're and be as careful as you can, not knowing where the red lines are. Somebody gave me the word calibrated earlier. You got to calibrate it. You have to know when should I push forward and when should I hold back. And look, that is a calculation that any journalist in this region knows. It's really bold of people. I'm from the U.S. and a lot of American journalists or Western journalist colleagues said, you should always never retreat, never look back. That's a luxury that Western journalists have because they live in a place where the press is free. In most of this part of the world where the press is not free, journalists every day make the calculation. When do I push forward? When do I hold back? When do I not report this? When do I tone this story down? Because they have to live in an environment where they can be arrested every day. So I find it really interesting that sometimes it's the American journalist and the British journalist who are saying, just go forward, never retreat, never look back. When journalists in this part of the world knowing when to pull back, knowing when to hold up, knowing when not to report something, saves you to be able to be a journalist for the next time. And as I mentioned, your first job as a journalist is to not get in prison. Because once you're in prison, you can't be a journalist anymore.
That's true. Well, how do you feel about the inevitable self-censorship that results from that? From knowing that if I interview that person, they're going to get in trouble, or I'm going to get in trouble, or if I ask this question of this person, I'm on the naughty list.
Everybody in this part of the world who works here has learned how to self-censor. And you try to self-censor in a way that doesn't affect your giving the news that's important to give to your audience. I've worked all over this region. In Thailand, you're not going to write the story that you want to write about the king of Thailand. You're self-censoring. When you're in Indonesia, you're not going to write some stories that might offend or might be considered blasphemous. In certain countries, I was banned from Indonesia for 2 years, right? I was banned for 2 years from Indonesia during the Suharto regime because I wrote a story which was actually favorable to Suharto, that the last couple sentences I kind of sloppily wrote, Suharto took power in a coup in 1965. I got myself banned for 2 years. Once I got back in, they took me, the national security people took me out for a coffee, showed me the offending article, and told me never again say Suharto took power in a coup. Say that Suharto saved the country from an aborted communist coup. So, did I self-censor after that? Of course I did. I wrote it in a way that wouldn't get me banned again. So, if you're based in China, as I was, based in Indonesia, as I was, if you're covering Thailand, as I did, you cover Indonesia, as I did, you learn how to phrase things and word things that are going to keep you out of jail or keep you from getting banned from the country.
Yeah. I think that the problem in Hong Kong is that we don't know what the things are that are going to get us banned or get us arrested. I mean, in China, you're not going to talk about certain things. In Singapore or Malaysia, you're not going to talk about certain things.
Yeah.
Hong Kong, we were kind of ready for this in 1998, and it didn't happen. And we kind of weren't ready for it in 2020.
Absolutely. Nobody's ready for this. And people who talk about the issues in Hong Kong now are comparing Hong Kong to the way it used to be. If you compare Hong Kong to other countries in Southeast Asia, it's not that bad. If you compare Hong Kong to Cambodia, it's not that bad. It's not as bad as Vietnam. It's not as bad as Laos. It's not as bad as Myanmar. But people are not comparing it to that. They're comparing it to what Hong Kong used to be. And they'll say, but Hong Kong used to be one of the freest countries. Now look, we can't report this, we can't report that. My attitude is, get used to it. We're in China. This is a part of China now. Report in Hong Kong the way we used to report in China. And if you look in China, there's still good journalism getting done. The Chinese mainland still has good journalists. You still have Six Tone, you still have Southern Weekend, you still have Magazine Caixin, you still have people doing good journalism, including investigative journalism in China. But as you say, you're correct. They know where the red lines are. Now here, I think people are maybe overcompensating because they don't know where the red lines are. The red lines are still being written, and the government is being intentionally vague about things. We still don't know. Is it legal or illegal to commemorate the Tiananmen Square massacre of June 4th, 1989? Is it legal or illegal? They won't say. All they'll say is, you must obey the law. Well, what's the law? Tell us. But they don't want to tell you because they want to keep you off balance. That's the problem here. The law is vague. The law is not specific. They want to keep journalists off balance, and they want to have the opportunity, as they did on June 4th, to arrest people, detain people without saying, what did I do? Is it illegal to show up in a black T-shirt at Victoria Park on June 4th? Is that a law against that or not? Is there a law against singing Glory to Hong Kong? We don't know. Is it a law against interviewing Joshua Wong?
Yeah.
We don't know. And they won't tell us that. So again, it's the way they keep journalists off balance.
Right. Now, just getting to what's happening immediately, you have 2 more weeks left at JMSC, at Hong Kong U, and enrollment in journalism schools is pretty healthy, despite the political climate. How do you explain that?
In September, we will have the largest Master of Journalism class we've ever had. We still got, so far, and we're only in June, we've got 82 paid. We've got another on the waiting list coming in who haven't paid yet. It'll be larger than the class we've had this year. Our undergraduate class will be fine. It'll be great. Because what I've discovered is, which is interesting, is students have discovered the importance of journalism. A lot of students that tell me, young students now, are in our undergraduate class, I ask them, why are you still interested in journalism? And they tell me 2019. They say the protest made them appreciate the importance of journalism for a free society. So we've got a lot of students coming in. They're interested in doing journalism. We've got students from the mainland coming in all the time who want to do journalism, and they want to learn Western best practices journalism. So journalism hasn't suffered yet. So I'm really optimistic. By the way, I've got so many of my students here in the audience here. I'm so happy to see them all, at the Bloomberg table, the New York Times table, the Reuters table. No, it's really exciting to see so many students still interested in journalism and still coming in despite the challenges. So they see the importance of journalism. And in Hong Kong, as opposition voices are being silenced, they're being silenced from civil society, they're being silenced from LegCo, they're getting ready to basically abolish the district councils and replace them with some appointed nonsense. This shows the importance of media. The media is the only one talking truth back to power. Mm-hmm. And so that shows the importance of media, and I think young people get that.
Okay, we have time for 2 questions, I think.
Only 2? Maybe I was so succinct.
No, really? Okay, so let me just ask you something.
Okay.
What have you learnt from teaching journalism as opposed to practicing journalism? What have your students taught you?
It's a bit of a cliche, but it's actually true. I learn more from students than they learn from me, I think, in a lot of ways. First of all, they will challenge you on some factual things, and you have to actually make sure that you're accurate about things. The topics they're interested in are topics that I necessarily wasn't interested in well before. The young students now are a lot smarter than I ever was when I started out doing journalism, and they've got a lot more information at their fingertips because of the internet and because of the digital world that we live in. They're incredibly smart. They speak more languages. They're more traveled than I ever was, when I was a young person. So they've got more opportunities. They see the world in a different way. They care more about diversity. They care more about gender equality. They care more about things that weren't really part of the equation when I was coming along as a journalist 100 years ago. So I'm really, really happy to see them tackling a lot of the stories that were not really stories when we were coming along. The other thing that's really interesting now is the barrier to entry is lower. It's more difficult to get that great job at the New York Times or Bloomberg or Washington Post as when I did it as a summer intern, but the barrier to entry is lower. You want to be a correspondent now, a foreign correspondent, find a place you want to be. As long as you've got a laptop and a cell phone, just go. You see young freelancers out there doing blogs and making a name for themselves, et cetera. So the barrier to entry, if I wanted to be a foreign correspondent, and I had to toil away covering the police beat and the city hall beat in Washington, D.C., young people now are making a name for themselves in Ukraine. They're making a name for themselves in other hotspots around the world. So the barrier to entry is a lot lower now than it used to be. And again, the media landscape is a lot more diffuse. The explosion of all these online sites now means that they're all looking for copy. They're all looking for content. So if you want to write, you want to shoot video, you want to do data journalism, there are a lot more points of entry, and it's a lot easier to do it.
Okay, we have a question from table 14. Is there a microphone for you?
I just want to ask a question that I know a lot of us at HKU Journalism have been devoting a lot of thought to, which is how you think ChatGPT and AI is going to transform both journalism education as well as journalism itself. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you so much. Question about ChatGPT. Look, we're at the beginning phase of this now, so we don't know whether it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. We just had our first case of a student who turned in an assignment via ChatGPT, and we had to actually figure out, what do we do with this? Do we charge them with plagiarism, or what do we do? I'm not 100% sure how we resolve that. Maybe Ting will know. But look, I think this is like the beginning of the internet. In the beginning of the internet, journalists didn't know about this new fangled thing called Google. What do we do with this? Can we use that to fact check? No, we can't do that. That's horrible. Now Google and Wikipedia are all a part of a journalist arsenal now. I think it's the same thing with ChatGPT. At the moment we all think this is a horrible thing. It's going to ruin journalism, etc. Over time, I think what's going to happen is journalists are going to find that ChatGPT can do a lot of the mundane stuff that they don't have to do. So a reporter is not going to have to sit in their office doing a mundane story about what the stock market did yesterday, or a mundane sports story. ChatGPT will be able to do that. It can't do it now. It still makes too many mistakes. But at some point, it's going to be good enough that you're going to have to only have a copy editor for the ChatGPT to make sure what they do is accurate. That means that the reporters, the young reporters here, you're going to actually be able to do what you can't do now, which is get out of your office and go interview people in real life. The one thing that ChatGPT cannot do, it can't go to a parking garage and interview Deep Throat and get the Watergate scandal. It can't sit in a coffee shop and get somebody to go off the record. So young journalists now are going to have to know how to do more deeply reported, investigative, and enterprise stories, because ChatGPT was going to be doing all those mundane stories that are keeping you chained to your desks. And that's the main problem I hear now, even from some students who have gone to work at news agencies and newspapers and others. They can't leave the office. There are too many mundane stories they have to sit there to do. If you get ChatGPT that can do that, AI can do that, that frees you up to do the thing that you really want to do, which is investigative, hard-hitting, enterprise reporting that requires talking to people off the record, meeting people in parking garages, meeting people who don't want to really talk to you, staking out people. A bot can't do that. AI can't do that.
Exactly.
So that's what's going to change.
Thank you, Cesare. Any other questions? I think.
I see it.
Oh, there is. Yes.
I saw a hand.
Hi, Keith. This is Chris Young. I think we all know that we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know what happened in the next couple of years. My question is about the presence of foreign media in Hong Kong. Obviously, the signs are not good. In recent particularly in the past year or so, we see the government taking a more aggressive or kind of a warrior approach in countering, say, reports published by foreign media. And then we have the Article 23 upcoming. So in 2 or 3 years' time, what would you envisage the picture of foreign media in Hong Kong in terms of their presence, in terms of their coverage? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Really great question. The future of the foreign media here. I think it's to start, I will say at the moment, the foreign media has actually been sort of left alone. We saw the shutdown of Apple Daily, the shutdown of Stand News, the voluntary shutdown of Citizen News. During all of that turmoil for the local media, the foreign media has been left kind of alone. Hong Kong Free Press is still out there operating.
Would you call them foreign media? Would you call Free Press foreign media?
Yeah, it's locally based, but the staff, it's run by Tom Grundy, but I would say English language media.
English language, yes.
South China Morning Post still has some op-eds in there that still has Harry Harrison's cartoons that make me kind of cringe.
But RTHK hasn't been left alone.
RTHK is very local. They've turned that into government radio now. But I think with foreign media, and specifically foreign media as looked at through the lens of the Foreign Correspondents Club in Hong Kong, I think they don't like us here, but I think they recognize that having us here is better for Hong Kong's image than kicking us all out. And but I don't know if that's going to last forever. I was based in Beijing for 3 years, and I lived in Shanghai, and I remember every time they had the National People's Congress, which usually came around in March, I would always get an invitation to go to it, and that's all the foreign media, and they would always put us in the best rows. We got the best seats. And then the cameras from CCTV and CGTN, they would always turn on us, and they would say, look, Here's our National People's Congress. It's so important, even the foreign media is here to cover it, because the foreign media gave them a kind of legitimacy. Now, I don't think they care that much about the foreign media. They've got their own kind of international media reach through CGTN and China Daily's, global reach. So I don't think they care as much as they used to. In Hong Kong, I still think, because they want to be an international financial center, they think having the foreign media here is still important to them. That's why I think they decided to renew the lease for the FCC. They knew that kicking the FCC out of their building, which would have meant we would not have ever gotten a lease on another building if we'd been kicked out by the government, they realized if we kick them out, how's that going to look at the time we're trying to say, hey, we're open for business again? So I think the foreign media here, at least for now, is being tolerated because they recognize that we're a necessary evil in their view. But again, what I'm going to look for in the future, and again, I can't speculate, will foreign media journalists coming into Hong Kong suddenly start finding they can't get visas? That's going to be interesting. Or foreign journalists based here, will they eventually find that they can't get their visas renewed? That's going to be very interesting as well. What's going to happen for the future of, I'm leaving the Journalism and Media Studies Center, leaving my colleagues. What's going to happen there? I don't know. We'll have to see. So there are all these kind of benchmarks that I'll be looking at for the future to see how serious are they about allowing foreign media to come to Hong Kong, or do they really want to turn this place into another Shanghai?
Right, exactly.
It's just fantastic to see this many journalists. This is probably Chris Tang's worst nightmare, but all these, foreign colluding journalists in one room together. It's just so great to see. So fantastic.
Thank you so much, Keith, for sharing. Good luck in the US, and I'm sure you'll be back. It's not goodbye, it's 再见.
Thank you.